All those things we'll see in the demo. So now let's look at EBS, using the how to use EBS, how to create them, how to attach all those processes. What can we do with EBS using AWS Management Console? So I've logged into my free account, the free trial account, and you can see I've gone to EC2, right? So thing to remember is, although EBS is an service, storage service, it doesn't come under, it is not listed under storage category, for example, right? We can go for services. You can see you have storage category here, but storage category, see Glacier, will see S3, S3, Recycle Bin, FSX, EFS. EFS is another elastic file system. We'll see generally used for Linux instances, but you can use for Windows as well. For Windows specific instance, you have another file system, FSX, on the storage system, FSX, which is a third party. You can see we can actually use EFS for Windows as well, not directly, like AWS backup something. There is no EBS because, as I said, we think EBS as the hard disk. So hard disk, the general hard disk, you can see external hard drive should generally be attached to the machine, right? So in this case, we'll have virtual machine, not the real machine, but virtual machine. Now, to see or to understand EBS, how to use EBS, how to create EBS, we'll need a machine, a virtual machine, or an EC2. So let's create an EC2. First, we'll quickly do that, and then we'll talk about the EBS. Storage, we'll create EBS and do other thing, right? So let's put simply demo EBS, right? Any name you can put for this EC2 instance, demo EBS, right? Now we can choose any AMIs. So let's skip the Amazon Linux, which is a free tier, you can see, right? And then the instance type T3 macro, we have 1 gig memory, right? 2 CPUs, that's enough. It's free tier as well, so we'll do that. Key pair login, we can create a key pair login. Let's create a key pair login, a new one, right? So we can create EBS KP, something like that, right? Key pair, and simply create. It will be downloaded to my download folder anywhere, in your machine also it will be a downloaded folder. You can download, right? Network settings, we could have created our VPC, put a EC2 there, and then went through this. But for this demo process, we can use, right? We can use the default VPC, which is provided. We can create a new one, but we'll simply do this right now. Subnet, no preferences. We can use any of the subnet if you want to select for just this demo, right? For more control over your resources, you'll first design VPC, create EC2, and then worry about EBS volumes in a real time work. But for this purpose, we will just no preferences, right? Availability zone, yes, we'll try and see the availability zone, and we'll select availability zone. So remember, is the EBS volume which we are going to create we'll create in the same availability zone, and it will be replicated across, right? Across the the availability zone. So we'll have backup as well. That's automatic, right? Now we'll leave auto assign public IP as it is. A firewall, we can select the default one, right? The default one, security groups. So we can select the default one, or we can create a new one as well. For now, we have already seen all these security groups, how to create. So we'll simply check the default one, right? Now, configure storage, yes, we have 8 GB general purpose 3. So that's, can see we can select other things as well, but general purpose SSD GPS3 is a default one. We'll just leave, and it's a root volume, right? Now, this is where the file which is needed to files and everything else needed to boot this operating system will be stored, right? We call it boot volume. In Linux terms, we'll simply say root volume, right? All the file which is needed to boot this computer or virtual machine will be stored there. So 8 GB is enough, right? It says free tier eligible customers can get up to, 30 gig of EBS general purpose storage, but or magnetic storage when we select this, but that's fine. We'll just keep it, right? That's enough. Right now, in advanced details, although we don't need, but just going through IAM profile, we have not created, will not create for now. We can create a profile and assign role. We know that, right? Previous also. Now, host name, we have said auto recovery, everything will leave it as a default, right? Networking, we have done. Security groups, we used the default one, right? So we are ready to create a demo EC2. So successfully initiate the launch. So eventually we'll have our EC2 listed here. You can see with EC2, you'll need to see, status check passed, then we can use it, right? So meanwhile, we can actually look at some of the features here, right? So networking, we know this is a public IP, automatically given for public IP. We can see networking, it's in this VPC, default VPC, which comes with the free tier account or AWS management console. Subnet ID, we didn't select it, so it's selected as the first one, right? And then AP Southeast East A, we selected. So the availability zone, public IP address, other things we can always see here, right? Security, again, we used the default security group, which is listed here. We may have to come here. So just, I'm just going through that. Storage, see that 8 GB boot volume, right? Device name devxpda, we created and it's there. About when the EC2 was created, so by default, we had this one we created. Now you see, this is actually EBS volume, right? We'll see that in a while. Now, it says initializing, we can refresh for a time, for one time. If we see, so I suspect the New Zealand region is a little bit slow, or somehow my browser is slow. I don't know why it is right now, right? I just toggle this one to now go and look for EBS volumes. Now, under this EC2 dashboard on the left-hand side, if you go here and look at Elastic Block Store, right? That is EBS, and click on volumes, you'll see that, one volume is already created, right? That was the boot volume, 8 GB boot volume. You can see it's not managed, right? Completed, initialization is completed, status check is okay, right? And volume is in use with the, we have not created snapshot ID, volume ID, this one, and it is in use with this attached resources already, right? Which is attached resources, that EC2, which actually while creating we got this, right? That's demo EBS, you can see. That's the EC2. It is attached automatically while creating. Now, what we are looking here is to understand EBS by creating and configuring it, right? So let's do the task. Let's do the demo for EBS now. Now, create volume. You can do, right? We can choose many types as we saw in the slide as well. So general purpose SSD is default, we'll just leave it, right? Size is 100 gig. We don't need 100 gig just for demo purpose. We'll simply have 10 gig, right? You can have 100 gig. And then remember, we can increase it as well later because it is elastic, right? IOPS, again, we can increase or decrease, but we'll leave at the default 3000, right? These things if we have a real need and we know that what kind of storage we'll be needing, then we can always configure that, right? Throughput will leave at default. Availability zone, remember, we used 6A there, so we'll leave it as a 6A on same availability zone. Are we creating this volume with a snapshot, with earlier snapshot, right? No, we are not, obviously, right? So don't create a volume for that. You can use encryption, right? With a KMS key, specify a custom key or a default key. We are not encrypting. We can simply specify a KMS key, right? Or use the default key, which more information you can see here as well, which will encrypt. For this demo purpose, we will not, right? So we'll simply keep that. Now key, we can put key. Name, key is always, key is a good thing to have. The tags, right? Name, EBS demo. Remember when you guys were doing lab last week, you wrote a lambda function to shut down your EC2 instances, right? So you wrote that, you wrote lambda function to shut down one of the instances because you gave the instance ID of that instance. Now, at that time in the lab, if you remember, while discussing, I had mentioned that if you have this tag for multiple resources, same tag, now you can directly use the name tag there and do whatever you want to do with those resources. It could include multiple EC2s, multiple storage volume. And if you have a common thing to do, let's say shut down or up down, well, EBS volume you don't shut down, but other things which are common things, you can write code and you can apply using tag to all of these resources at once. Not creating a snapshot, so we'll simply click create volume. Yeah, so see, this volume is created. We'll simply name it as EBS 1. Make sense? Yes, this was already there, so we'll just to name to remember, we have EBS 1. Now new volume is created. Right now, let's say you went to market, you buy a new hard disk of SSD type and of 10 gig and other things. If you notice here, if you scroll and notice here, it will see it's available, right? As opposed to in use. Why? Because this hard disk you have just bought, but you have not connected it to any computer. In other words, in this case, we have not attached it to any virtual machine or any EC2, right? So we will, if it is selected, right, we will go for action, right? And then we'll see attach volume. You can see now where we want to attach in that VPC, right? We have a demo ECS. That's what, the EC2, the virtual machine we created, EC2 created. So we'll simply give that, right? And we'll select a div, the data name for this volume as well, device name for this volume. So hard disks, CD in Windows environment, we are used to name that. In Linux, we will select what options we have here, right? Let's say we did dev/dev/sdf, right? Now we have to remember this name because we have to do a few more steps after doing this, right? So you have 10 gig, EBS 1 new volume, right? We created, and now we have attached, and you can see it's in use, right? Now let's go back and see if this EBS is actually attached, or we can access this volume from, it is attached basically, but can we access this volume from the EC2? That's the point, right? That's why we have attached. Now, because it is a Linux machine, and similarly for Windows machine as well, we need to follow a process, right? We have to mount this drive to the EC2 in order for us to be able to access that EC2 or that EBS from that EC2, right? So let's go to our EC2. Yeah. Yeah, this is our EC2, isn't it? So select this and we'll try and connect to this EC2 to see if it is accessible. If it is not, we'll make it accessible. Now we have we have SSH client. We'll use SSH client to log in, right? So I'll simply copy this one. See, SSH, right? Minus I, you have the key created. We created the key. Remember, right? We created the key while creating this SSH. This is RSA key pair, and root will be the user, right? And this is the DNS name of this EC2, isn't it? Let's go and see check, right? So you have instance ID, public address. You can use it, use public IPv4 address also to simply log in, or simply SSH, right? To use SSH. Host type name, you can see private DNS name, you have public DNS. So that's the DNS it is showing us, right? Let's do correct again, this DNS name, or you can simply use that public IP address as well. So for now, let's copy this one. You remember you have downloaded it to, the key is downloaded to downloads folder, right? This is the key, isn't it? Right. So let's go to the terminal, try and connect. In Windows, you'll have PowerShell. From PowerShell, I guess SSH will be allowed. Otherwise, you can always do RDP. RDP for Windows client. If your EC2 has Windows, right? Anyways, let's see that. Right. So we'll go to, let me navigate to downloads first, because I have that key in download, right? And I will try and change permission. Default permission doesn't allow the key file to load right into the command where we can actually access it into the remote machine. So we'll give read write execute kind of permission to our key file, right? So basically okay, good. Now we can do SSH, right? Right. It says please log in as the user, EC2 user rather than user root. That's the recommendation, but it strictly follows that. See, it was showing here as root. For some example, by default, any EC2, any Linux EC2, Amazon using Amazon Linux, you will have a user created called EC2. That's user, right? This one. So we will simply use this one, right? Where we have given user. To user, right? And try and connect. See, now it's connected, right? I am inside this. Sorry. Yeah. So that's demo EBSC. That's the private address. It is showing. So I'm inside this machine, the private address here, right? I'm inside this machine. Now, right? We'll need to know a few Linux command to be able to mount or to be able to access that attached EBS volume from this machine. Now, df-h will show us what are the file system which is installed already. You can see we don't see /dev/sdf. Was it SDF? Yes, /dev/sdf. So we don't have that drive attached here. Now, you see, when we create a volume, EBS volume, it's a plain volume, right? So in Windows terms, we have not formatted it to be able to match with any file system. So we have to create file system first. Now for Linux, we'll create ext file system, right? We are attaching Linux OS, so we will create a Linux or ext file system. So MKFS is creating a file system of type, right, ext4, and then the name of that drive, right? So it is dev slash sdf, isn't it? So yeah, see, file creating file system with such size, such blocks, file system UID is an exe4 type system. Now, if you don't know, you can always Google about commands. But if you don't know, what we can do is we can also do manual, that is right, symbol command, and look for description of these commands, how to use it. In Linux, we know that, right? You guys have done Linux class recently, so you all know those things. Now we have created file system, right? ext4 type file system, which is compatible with Linux. Now we will mount this file system. Linux will recognize this file system. Where do we want? We can mount anywhere, but good practice says we should be mounting inside a folder which we'll create. That's why we are creating make folder, make directory. MK is make, dir is for directory. Inside this mnt or mount folder. So you have a default mnt there. With Linux, we will create here. Let's say ebs1, this folder we are just creating to mount that drive into this folder, right? Okay, it says permission denied because that should be done using sudo, right? Now, the final thing, we need to mount it, right? So sudo mount slash dev sdf, that was our drive, right? EBS volume to mnt, and the folder we created, ebs1. Done, right? Now let's see if it has our drive in EBS, it is mounted or not, right? Slash fs mnt and ebs1, right? You can see there is a lost and found file. So you can see lost plus found, basically. There's it is mounted, we can access. Let's do something further, right? So let's do cd slash mnt ebs, right? I'm here. You can see this one. I can create a file. Let's say cat, right? I'll just say first EBS volume mounted, something like that, isn't it? And I'll redirect this to file. So first EBS dot txt, let's say, right? Again, we have to manage permissions, right? It always, because we have created using sudo, so we are with sudo. Now, okay. Not letting me creating file. This is just creating file, right? Okay. I will use vim. Let's say sudo vim. It's not letting me write, right? So first ebs.txt. You can create anything. I'm just creating this one right here. Hello. This is my first EBS volume. Test to EC2 and mounted. Test and mounted, you can say, to EC2. And mounted to EC2, right? Let's see. Okay, and you can see we have this first EBS file here. So we mounted an EC2. What we did, we mounted an EBS file, EBS volume. We created first, we attached it to an EC2 virtual machine, and then we mounted. Now we can access. As you can see, I created a file there, wrote something, right? Depending on our need, now we can do that, right? So I will just leave it here and come back again to our EBS volumes to do other things. So we have, you can see a EBS volume here, right? We created, we attached all these things happened. Now, the next thing, we will doing the PowerPoint, we saw that we saw there and we explained, I explained that we can create a snapshot of EBS volumes as well. So how to do that? Let's see that next. So you go to action, create snapshot, right? We can, furthermore create lifetime. You can see a policy of this snapshot as well, but let's just keep it here. So source volume, again, the same volume we are creating, snapshot, or we are cloning this volume, right? Description, you can say snap, whatever that that is okay for us, or that makes us easy to remember, or easy description to understand why we created this snap, right? That EBS, you can simply say snap EBS, right? You can have, we didn't encrypt that. There's no encryption option. We can again create, right, a tag just to have group it together, say snap EBS. I just, put the name, right? So create snapshot. Right? So if we refresh it, you can see this, everything is okay. Now to see that snapshot, right? In Elastic Block Store, you can go to snapshot, and eventually we have two snaps. Maybe the previous one I had created for other things, but there is snap EBS. You can see that's what we created, isn't it? The snapshot, because the drive was almost empty, so you can see there's no size here, but for previous ones, there was some size. It will have some size. Eventually, we'll see. Now, why we take snapshot? We take snapshot, you can see progress 100% completed, snapshot status pending. So it's in creation stage, basically. The status is still not ready, right? So while it is getting ready, we will look. Why do we need snapshot for? Right? So, put snapshot size here. I hope so. Yeah, snapshot status completed. So it's kind of ready. We need snapshot to back up our EBS volumes, the data or whatever, files we have in our EBS volumes, we can back up that, right? Now, this snapshot, you can see, can be shared directly to AWS regions as well. We'll have to take care of pricing of different AWS regions, but it can be shared as well. Another use of that snapshot, you can create a new volume from that snapshot. So you have a backup snapshot. Let's say after a year, you needed all those data. So you can create a volume and use that snapshot to create that volume so that you can use or access that data again, right? So let's see how do we do that, right? So we'll go back again to volumes. We have this snapshot, right? Just remember it has D9 at the end ID. This was previously. So D9, 10 gig, right? This is what snap EBS we have created. Let's go back to the volume. Now we will create another volume, right? Let's keep it like that. We can increase, decrease size as well as, we wanted, but I will just keep it simple, 10 gig, right? It's elastic storage, we know, right? So volume can be extended 100, even for that snapshot, which has only 10 gig, right? A snapshot of 10 gig previous EBS volume. We can create a snapshot. Yeah, we can create a volume using that snapshot of 100 gig. And we have to do some adjustment while mounting. that can be done, but we'll leave it for now. So we'll just simply keep 10 gig, same availability zone, you can see, right? Initially, we said don't create volume from a snapshot while creating the previous EBS1 volume. We now has a snapshot here. So we'll use that snapshot to use now. I forgot. You can see there are so many snapshots here, example snapshots, but I forgot the snapshot which we created. Was it 80? No. Was 27? No. So let's specify snapshot ID. So let's go to our snapshot first, copy the ID. So here and snapshot. Right. So this is our snapshot ID. We'll simply copy the ID, here from it's D9, right? At the end D9, it is not showing here, but where's that? Yeah. So by the custom snapshot ID, yes, we have custom snapshot ID. We just copy it from there. We'll save it, right? So fast snapshot store we didn't select previously, so not enabled for selected snapshot, right? Volume initialization rate, that's also will not enter. Minimum is 100, but will not have to have fast things for now, just for demo. That's for encryption, will not do it. We can do it if we want, right? Name tag, we can say name value, maybe EBS2, right? Again, it was optional, don't have to create that, right? So we'll just check, yes, we are creating volume with this snapshot ID, and we'll do create volume. Yeah. So this is the volume we are creating now. It's getting created. We can rename it just to have EBS, make for us to make to identify it easily. Basically, we can name it, right? You can see status is okay. It's initializing. Right now, it is a raw kind of, not as raw as the previous original we created. It's from a snapshot, so we didn't to format. We don't have to create a file system. We'll see while mounting. Anyways, but it is getting right. So it is it's a volume which was created using a snapshot. Now, to be able to use this volume, again, we have to attach it to machine. In this case, a virtual machine, EC2, right? So I'll simply refresh it while it is getting ready. Hopefully it is ready as soon as possible. Yeah, so it's ready, kind of available. See, the previous one is already attached. So to EC2, so it's in use status. Now we have only available status. So the hard disk, in a sense, the volume, EBS volume is ready, right? We can simply select it, right? Attach it. We will try and attach the volume to instance. We have only one instance. If we had multiple, we can select any one, right? It's running, so we'll select that. Now device name, this is another drive, right? This is another extra drive. So we'll select the different one. You can see SDF is already taken. No point selecting. Let's select SDG, for example. Yeah. So we'll select SDG and attach the volume. Right. So when it is attached, the status will be changed to in use. So it's attached. You can see. Right now, come back to our EC2. I had already logged in, remember? So come back to our EC2 and we'll just go away from this folder. The cd dot, right? We are in root now, right? So first we have to check if this drive is here or not. We have attached, but it won't show up here. You see, mounted the previous drive of 10 gig was mounted to mount EBS1. So this one is showing up here, 9.8 gig, 10 gig, right? But not the new drive. Why? It is not mounted. Now you don't have to create a file system again. right? So it's not, that a raw drive, we have to format and attach it to our computer, but we have created it from snapshot. So it's not raw anymore, in a sense, right? So we'll simply create a dir. Again, it can be mounted anywhere. So just to have, just to have, organized, just to be organized, for example, right? We will do again in MNT, we are creating a folder, but here we will do EBS2, for example, right? EBS1 has another drive. So I tend to use sudo and right? Then we can directly mount. Unlike previously, we had to create file system, we have to format using a file system. So mount slash, what was our drive name? DEV, right? SDF was previous one. So it was SDG, isn't it? To MNT slash EBS2. Yeah, mounted. Right? We can see, if we can see files, because it was a snapshot of previous device, right? So the file we created must be there. See, the first ebs.txt, and it's in mount ebs2, right? Another device. So that's how, right? So this was a short demo on how to create an EBS volume, right? How to attach. We didn't have an EC2, so we created EC2 at first, and how to attach that EBS volume we created to machine, to the EC2, and to be able to use that extra hard drive which we attached, we have to mount it, right? So initially we formatted it or created a file system ext4, and then we mounted it to a folder of our choice. Then we explored how to create a snapshot of that volume. What is the point of creating snapshot? To basically back up that volume, right? Across regions, we say it is, a region operatable. So you can simply, we have created here in New Zealand region, right? We can put it to Sydney region back in Australia if we need, right? So that is the backup. Let's say if you want to use that backup, how do you do that? So you create another volume using that snapshot. That's what we did, EBS2, you can see, right, isn't it? Using a snapshot. We saw, we do, and then we created that volume, then attached it to the EC2 we wanted it to attach, and then mounted it. When you mount it, now both of the drives should be shown as a part of the system. Right? You can see MNT EBS1, MNT EBS2, isn't it? The two drives. And this snapshot had a same file. So this ends today's session. We will continue next time with remaining slides and remaining demos.